prioritizing everyone's safety, so please wear your masks at all times. Second, to give respect to our guest speakers and the general audience, kindly switch your phones to silent mode for the entire duration of the session to avoid any unnecessary interruptions. Third, let's make sure we treat our event venue with utmost care and respect by keeping our surroundings clean, duly following the CLAGO policy. Web3 PH Summit is a safe and inclusive learning space for all of us, so please do enjoy but also be respectful. During the event proper, everyone is encouraged to listen attentively. Any questions will be entertained if prompted by the moderator. Furthermore, allow me to take this opportunity in thanking our partners, sponsors, and volunteers for making this event possible. Web3 PH Summit is co-presented by PlaygroundZero.io, a community-focused GameFi platform that connects gamers, guilds, and GameFi studios. Our major sponsors, Draper Startup House, a global accommodation, accelerator, incubator, and co-working space for entrepreneurs. Delysium, the first playable AAA Web3 game. FDev Philinvest Development Corporation Digital Foundry is a venture studio in the Philippines that takes up startup ideas from lab to market scale-up. Filipino Web3 Festival is a week-long Web3 celebration in the Metaverse's hottest destination. Our minor sponsors, Moneybees, an over-the-counter crypto exchange platform. PDAX, a BSP-licensed cryptocurrency exchange that enables traders to buy and sell digital assets directly with PHP. Tetrix, an interconnected ecosystem that aims to bridge the gap among all blockchain projects. Special thanks to our media partners. The Mega Maxi is the premier Web3 media company for the savvy and the curious, creating today, building tomorrow. Crypto Slate is a comprehensive and contextualized source for crypto news, insights, and data. WhenInManila.com is an online metro guide focused on Manila and in the Philippines. Crypto.news is a market-leading crypto online media publication that provides the latest news and market updates from the crypto ecosystem. NFT.news is a market-leading NFT online media publication providing the latest news and market updates from non-fungible tokens ecosystem. LiveCatch PH is an online event live streaming and a video production company. Our community partners, Filipinas NFT is a women-led community in the Philippines composed of creators, artists, collectors, and builders in the Web3 space. Crypto Pinas is a Filipino crypto community for newbies and veterans that discuss blockchain, cryptocurrencies, NFTs, and more. DevCon is a non-profit organization that empowers Filipino developers and future geeks. Social Media Marketing PH is a marketing community for freelancers and social media managers on Facebook. Startup Academy is the first digital marketing school in the Philippines that offers comprehensive training and one-on-one coaching programs. FH Moms is a social enterprise and the first and biggest Pinay Moms community that delivers accessible upskilling courses and linkage to strong community ties. Our swag partner, Swag by Quote, is a B2B merchandise platform that provides premium and top-notch memorable quality gift experience. Lastly, on behalf of Web3PH, we would like to extend our gratitude to all our volunteers offline and online for working tirelessly to bring this event to life. I would like to remind that everyone that Playground Zero is by the elevator. You could all claim your freebies now. This event will definitely be incomplete without a fun little game and for of the first ever Web3 PH Summit happening here at Draper Startup House. This afternoon's next event is entitled Venture Forward, How to Fund Your Web3 Startup. And for this session, we will be hearing from Web3 investors themselves. So without further ado, our keynote speaker is Ken Basic of Magnus Capital. Magnus Capital is one-stop shop for innovators to turn their daring ideas into real solutions. They have the expertise, network, and capital to ensure you get your journey started off on the right foot. Again, let's please put our hands for Mr. Ken Basic.
Yeah. Oh, there we go. Okay. Hey guys, can I just begin now? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So great pleasure being here. Thanks for having me, guys, and kudos to the team to really doing this. And really wanted to thank each and every one of you for coming here. I know it's not that easy given the harsh weather conditions, but really appreciate your time being here. And I promise I'll make it worth your time. So what I'm going to discuss today is about venture forward, how to fund your Web3 startup. So yeah. So GM, I'm Ken. I'm the head of research for Magnus Capital. A brief background into us. We've been a Web3 fund since 2017. And so far in our journey, we've invested in over 250 plus portcos, and we've done our best to support them all out through the years. And with that, our fund is about, oh yeah, thank you. Our fund is about 100 million in size right now. And yeah, we're still actively investing and supporting our portcos as the years go by. Just click this. Or just, yeah, let's just do that. So just wanted to share with you guys, and I just made this up like 2 weeks ago. This is the 6 Ps. Yeah, that's okay. This is the 6 Ps to fundraising, which I consider them as like 6 tenets as well. So moving forward. So the number one thing that you have to think about for yourself is what is the purpose for raising, right? So, yeah. Oh, thank you. Yeah. Just click. There we go. What is the purpose for your raise? What you have to first and foremost identify is, do you actually need the money to expand, or do you have the right run rate right now? Because if you have the right capital, you won't really need much more to expand your operations or grow. If you have a business model that's working, you won't be needing to fund it further. So you have to tell yourself, why do I want to raise the capital? Is it really for me to make the project grow? Or is it just that I'm looking for additional capital, just money? It has to be kind of capital that you will be using efficiently to make your project better. So you also have to identify to yourself, what kind of raise am I going to do? Is it going to be token or equity? Because there are huge differences today to token and equity kinds of raises. If you are going to do token, it was more famous in 2021, but people are starting to realize that if you want to raise a token in Web3, you have to have actual proper use cases to why you're actually doing this. So when you raise for token, make sure that there's utility and that your token makes sense in general. So if you don't have like a token model to actually follow, you'd be better off just raising for equity, or maybe a mix of both if you find equity more sustainable. So moving on. So here's a quote that I just want to be sharing from Twitter. A lot of people actually think that raising capital will better their project. But, Hayden Adams, the founder of Uniswap, didn't actually need that stuff, And Uniswap is probably by far the most well-known DEX and the most profitable DEX by all time. So moving forward. The second P I'd like to touch on is product. So you want to tell yourself and ask yourself, do you have the right product or market fit for the current market? Okay? You want to identify what you do best and focus on your product. If I'm a lawyer, per se, and I want to go for Web3, I want to build applications that have my expertise in it. So I want to build like smart contracts that will help with, I guess, projects that are trying to fix their legal issues. I want to prove utility in what I'm good at, right? So you want to identify value in what you're building, and make sure that value is actually something useful that you're solving pain points for. So if you're a project doing like a marketplace, is this the right kind of marketplace? Am I actually solving something by going crypto, by doing Web3? And if there is sort of value in what you're doing, you should be sure that you have a competitive edge. Say, for example, your marketplace, an NFT marketplace. And there are tons of NFT marketplaces in the crypto space. So you have to identify, what do I do best? What do I do better against my competitors? And what's my target market for this? Yeah. And also, you have to make sure that your business model is very sustainable. With a very sustainable business model, VCs will come in and see that, okay, this is an interesting product. This is a product that has value and provides value to retail users and consumer-facing people. And yeah, with a sustainable and scaling business model, it won't be hard for VCs to see that it's really growing to a good state. And you also have to have the experience in building the specific project, just as I identified in the first point. Also, lastly, you have to be flexible. With such a market like this, I mean, there are going to be hard and good times, but you have to be able to fix your product to reflect the current demand for whatever's out there. Number 3 is preparedness. And so I broke this down into 2 points, but there's so much that you guys can be ready for. But I wanted to break this into your pitch and your timing. Number 1 from the pitch, you want to be starting off with a deck, because this is the one that's going to be speaking volumes for you guys. This is the one that's going to be around Telegram, going around like different VCs. You won't even need to speak. Your deck does that for you. So you have to completely make sure that your deck is always on point. And actually, design is a huge part of that. The flow, how it looks like. People would think that information is very valuable. It's very important that you guys also design how the information looks like, because a good narrative comes from design, right? And lastly, and another one is approach. You want to make sure that when you're approaching VCs, you don't just badger them with your project. You want to be a founder that's interesting, a founder that shows character, personality, and therefore, you know, it's going to be easier for VCs to invest in you guys just because they see how much good of a person you are. So yeah, and lastly, questions. You have to be ready for the questions that anyone can throw out. With that, I just wanted to like touch on a story. I had a friend from PlayCash. His name is Jove. The funny thing is, I asked him a tough question about FX. So his product was more on like Web 2, going Web 3, 2.5 in a sense. And when I asked him about a tough question about foreign exchange, this guy came out ready with a deck, man. So I appreciated that so much, and it was really good of him to do that. That kind of initiative is something that VCs really appreciate and we really look forward to. So just to touch on this quote and research, VCs spend an average of 3 minutes and 44 seconds on a pitch deck. Guys, we have short attention spans. So it's really important that you guys capture your audience with the information you have, with the design of your pitch, and whatever you bring forth to the VCs. Now, going on to the timing side of things, it's very important that when you're building something, you hit actual targets for your product roadmap, because that's what VCs want, and that's what we're looking for. People who can actually execute on their promises. And going forth with macroeconomics, it's very important that you guys be raising an environment that's better for VCs, better for your investors and backers. And that also kind of mixes in with the market conditions, right? So I believe you guys would actually feel that VCs are more comfortable in investing when it's a bull market. It's much easier to get capital when it's a bull market just because the conditions are much more easy. So just here's another quote. VCs have a record amount of money to invest, but only when they're ready. So here's a sort of graph to show how much dry powder there is. There's so much that hasn't been invested, and there is so much to be invested in the next cycle. So here's kind of an illustration of how that's going to look like. When that market correction comes, when that bull market, when that next cycle comes, you know, VC-backed startups will, you know, have an influx of great capital to work with. So number 4 is going with your partners when you raise. The right partnerships will set your path right. Okay, so I want to touch on investors and backers first. You want to be collecting and selecting. not just taking random capital. Let's say I'm just a random investor, I'm an angel, but no one knows me, but I'm willing to give you 2 million. Would you guys take that? The easy answer would be no. I mean, do you know this person? Do you actually know if he's gonna provide value for your project? It's very important that you guys collect, then select your investors, your backers, and your partners. So you wanna be thinking about what value adds they bring to the table, if they're the actual right VC for you. Because other VCs have different mandates, and other VCs have different areas of expertise. So you want to be aligning with the VCs that fit you best. So there's actually 2 ways to approach when you're raising for investors or backers. So there's lead round and party round. I prefer the lead side of things because that would be where the VC would actually champion you and help you raise with other proper VCs. Whereas if it's a party round where you have a bunch of other investors, right? So these VCs will network you for more strategic partnerships. So you guys should choose wisely. And your go-to market, your partnerships will really set that straight. So you want to go for platforms that help you launch. Let's say you're a GameFi project. The good kinds of partnerships that won't need money are like guilds, game launchers, game infrastructure. So these are the type of plays that will help you make a better market when you guys launch. Right? Your user base and community also depends on that because it's a win-win relationship. You know, if you partner up with these different firms, it will help you to your go-to market and have actual traction and growth. So yeah, that's for the go-to market side of things. And number 5, which is progress. And here's a short illustration that I want to be showing you guys into what a diamond looks like when it's unpolished and when it's not actually like when it's actually raw. So polishing is the key to progress. Now, when you polish something, you start with everything that you can do, right? So you have your pitch, you have your craft. You should be polishing every single moment that you find you can have feedback from, that you feel like you can fix something. You always want to make things better just so that you can always progress. And number 6, going to the last P, which is passion. And I just want to share with you guys a quote. You have to be burning with an idea or a problem or a wrong that you want to right. If you're not passionate enough from the start, you'll never stick it out. So that's a quote from Steve Jobs. And yeah, there are a lot of harsh sentiments in the market, a lot of things that will happen wrong. So if you want to be staying long in this game, you have to be actually passionate about what you're doing. Because if you're not, it's not going to do well if things happen wrong or when things don't go your way. So yeah, this is just a short tweet that I want to be sharing with you guys. 2008, Airbnb sought 115 just funding. Most of them weren't, like all of them were interested, right? And now 10% of Airbnb is now, this is like 7 billion. So that's really some crazy stuff. So just to sum it all up, here's the 6 Ps that I told you guys about, starting from passion, purpose, product, progress, partners, and pitch. I hope you guys remember this, and I'm really happy to share with you guys. Yeah. So yeah, this is just about that, 6 tenets. Thanks, guys. Let me know if you guys have any questions.
Thank you so much for that very, very insightful presentation, Ken. Again, a round of applause for our keynote speaker. Moving on to the next part of our program, we will be joined by 4 notable people in their respective fields. Joining Ken is Eula C., the head of growth at Archipelago Labs. Archipelago Labs is a Web3 startup accelerator focused on the Philippines. They invest and accelerate the Philippines' most promising early-stage Web3 startups and provide reputable market navigation to Web3 Philippines for their partners. A round of applause, please. Next on the deck, we have James Park, Associate Program Manager of the Sandbox Metaverse Accelerator Program at Brink Venture Capital. The goal of the program is to support the launch of new startups who will improve the technology used by the Sandbox, namely GameMaker and VoxEdit, and provide unique, one-of-a-kind experiences for players of this Sandbox. Again, a round of applause for Mr. James Park. Next on the deck, we have Mr. Winston Damarillo, the CEO of Talino Ventures. Talino Venture Labs is on mission to bridge the financial inclusion gap for 1.7 billion people around the world. Through the successful venture studio model, we build reputable, scalable, and profitable fintech that empower undeserved, underrepresented groups across the globe with financial access and mobility. A round of applause for Mr. Winston, please. Last but not the least, joining us as our moderator for today, we have Mr. Christian Munoz, the founder of Draper Startup House. DSH consists of physical business hubs, education service, venture capital, and technology services. They exist to connect, inspire, and empower 1 million entrepreneurs by 2030. A round of applause for our panelists today.
All right. Thank you so much, guys, for being here. I know it's been a hard day. It's been a lot of rain, but we have fantastic speakers, so we want to make this very interactive. So if you guys have any questions, like please feel free to come, raise your hand, but we want to make this a lot of interactions. I know you guys have a lot of questions, and we have like people coming from overseas. We have people from the Philippines, so this is a unique opportunity. So thanks again for the organizers also for putting this amazing panel together. So we'll just start with some brief introductions. So maybe James, if you can start, please.
Okay, I'm not one to usually go first because I'm a super introvert. But yeah, so hi, this is James again. I'm from Brink Hong Kong. We're a venture accelerator company. We like to invest in early stage startups, looking to build interesting or what we call game changers. We're looking to find entrepreneurs who believe their vision and what they're building is going to be potentially sort of changing the world. At Brink, I'm really looking over the Sandbox Metaverse Accelerator Program, as we mentioned, and we're looking to invest in startups looking to build either on the sandbox or also building in technologies for the metaverse.
Cool. Hi, I'm Winston Damarillo. I'm the CEO of Talino Ventures. We're confused because we're both a VC and an entrepreneurial group. I used to run venture capital for Intel Corp in the US, and I've also built a few startups back in California. And I couldn't decide which one's more fun to do, being a VC or being an entrepreneur, so we ended up doing both. What's super exciting right now is Web3. Not in a sense that, I hear a lot of kids talk about becoming crypto millionaires, right? So that's a dream that's never gonna happen. But what Web3 is looking to do is change the way we use the internet, change the way we conduct business, and that's extremely fundable. So for anyone that's kind of in that space, great time to be in. The best startups that I invested came right after recessions like now. And the best entrepreneurs are the ones that have great sustainability and resilience. So this is the right time to invest. And you're going to see a lot of VCs invest smartly. So if you get money in these times, you're rock stars. So.
Hello, Hello, I'm Ulysses. I'm from Archipelago Labs. So I used to be a digital advertising professional before I moved into tech startup space within like 2016. And now with Archipelago Labs, we actually accelerate and invest in early stage Web3 startups. So whether you're founded abroad coming into the Philippines, that's what we're looking at right now. Yeah, so we're looking forward to see and meet new builders here.
I think kind of my background was touched on earlier, so I'm just my kind of history. So yeah, as I mentioned earlier, I'm Ken. I'm the head of research for Magnus. Yeah, what we do at Magnus and what I do mainly is my bread and butter is in research and reviewing the projects to see if we can invest in them or not, or if it makes sense. And then, yeah, actually my background comes in TradFi. Mainly started in trading stocks, then moved into different kinds of assets, all kinds of financial markets, all kinds of instruments. Then I moved into alternative assets for a company named Prequin. That was when kind of my research sort of, I guess, background started. I went with Prequin, then afterwards I moved into my first job as a, I guess, investment analyst for Merkle Hedge. So that's a market making firm and a prop trading kind of company. Then moved into Magnus to become the head of research. So yeah.
Awesome. So Winston, we were talking a couple of minutes ago about like Web 1, Web 2, Web 3. So you have a lot of experience, and you've done it all of the webs. So what kind of patterns do you see from like the internet times and now with like this decentralization? Like what kind of inflection points do you see that are gonna bring this mass adoption as we happened before in the internet, right? I think there's people here that are experts or like maybe like not as much as experts. So this happens before, right? With the internet, the .com, and all of these. Like, what do you think is gonna bring the inflection to get more people to be onboarded into the crypto, into this space of Web3?
Yeah, so what's really exciting, and this is how I feel about it as an entrepreneur and as a VC, Web 1 was really fascinating because we had to build everything, right? We had to build the infrastructure, dial-up ISPs, first instances of web pages. We even had to build the browser at the time, right? Netscape and all these things to begin with. So that felt very pioneering from that standpoint, right? And you have a lot of, like the real geeks come out, right? Because you're building real things and you're changing the world, right? From a non-internet affected world to an internet affected one. And I think that was kind of interesting, and a lot of wealth got created there, and a lot of cultural changes came about in Web 1. I frankly think Web 2 was boring, right? It was just kind of a continuation of Web 1, where people just simply, did more with Web 1, right? Read, write, started doing transactions on the internet, but also the bad of the internet started to come, right? When you have these massive mega companies dominating our privacy, dominating our assets, dominating our content. If you look at it, if you're a tuber, right, the take of a creator in a YouTube environment is like 0.001 relative to what YouTube takes, right? So I feel like Web 2 was kind of a disappointment. I also feel like around the time Web 1 started to get complemented by open source. This is the idea that we can all build together, we can combine, and DevCon was here. Anybody from DevCon here? Anyway, so DevCon, for instance, was built on the idea that we can build from each other's work and things will be better. So what's really exciting about Web3 is that thinking is here again, right? The idea that we can build new things differently, the idea that infrastructure that now is available freely on the web, like blockchain, like DAOs, like IPFS, all these fundamental new plumbing that is now available in the internet is a platform for dramatically changing yet again how we deal with the internet. And what you're gonna see, this is the most important term on the internet, is the word decentralization, right? And that's really also reallocation of wealth creation on the internet. And for all of you entrepreneurs, that's a good signal. So from a VC standpoint, we're investing heavily on Web3. Our venture builder builds a startup, starts off with $250,000 to prove concept, and then follow that with $2 million to kind of bring it to market. And there's a lot of opportunity in that space today. We're continuing to invest, and we're continuing to even diversify the way we invest in bringing to the table crowdfunding. So I think that's another thing that people start to look at. So yeah, just a really long way to say I'm super excited about Web3, and you all are in the right space for what you're doing now.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's, for fundraising, it's just definitely a new, refreshing, a lot more opportunities, and we are our own part of the space. So talking about spaces and metaverse, James, I know you're like very familiar with that space, and you're actually building also with the sandbox. And so what kind of companies, what kind of entrepreneurs are you looking for here in the Philippines?
I think when a lot of people talk about the metaverse, and that's also me included, we sometimes sort of make it sound a lot bigger than it is. But I guess from my personal perspective, what I'm really interested about metaverse or metaverse-related startups is they're at the forefront of retail tech development. So you hear like big words like AR, VR, XR. You also talk about payment systems, frictionless sort of, or cashless payment systems, for example. Like I live in Hong Kong and we use cash for everything, which just blows my mind because Hong Kong is meant to be a financial city. Like, for example, like here in Philippines, you have GrabPay. It's like I don't know why Hong Kong doesn't have this sort of stuff, but it's really sort of metaverse companies or metaverse startups are really leading the charge in developing new technologies. So and also in that light of, I guess, to answer your question, why I'm interested in the Philippines is that you guys have a very young and vibrant community. You have a lot of developers. I mean, I have my own company where we hire Filipino developers as well, but I think one day like there will be a lot of smart young folks like you guys who will be like, wait, we should gather these guys together and build our own company. And I look forward to when that day comes around.
Yeah, and I know Wisdom's you're like developing a lot of developers, right? With DevCon and like, you have this school and there's a lot of companies and in Web3 space that are bringing a lot more like the developing the skills that the people need. So it's great to have investors also coming here to the Philippines. So Yula, from the Philippines perspective, like how an entrepreneur, like what's different or how easy it is to raise funds here versus, you guys invested more like focusing in the Philippines, right?
Yeah. I think in Web2, it was quite challenging for startups to raise funds versus I think Web3 kasi offers a lot of opportunities for the startups to raise funds. So I think it's at the same level already on how Filipinos will raise. But in effect, what we believe kasi, like at least in Web3, like coming from the latest run, the bull run we had, like you've seen the glimpses of the potential of the Philippines already coming from there. You'd see how many users were onboarded into Web3. And that's very much comparable into the world. So we really believe that the Philippines has what it takes, not just users, but also builders in the space that can make it into Web3, which is why we really focus on it. So what's really important for us to look for in founders or teams is actually also accelerator startup fit. We look at founders not just if the team is very well equipped or very knowledgeable in what they do. There's also that factor wherein we think if it's something we can contribute into as a VC or an investor. We also look is this a startup that we can help grow and not just like profit from or something. So that's what we really look at also as an accelerator VC. Yeah.
Yeah, I think for us, I've seen like we've done a lot of events here, and I think a lot of the perception is just Philippines is users, community, and we start seeing a lot more of the builders. I mean, what James was saying, and as well. So there's a lot of investors coming here, like the next couple of weeks. So it's gonna be interesting. We actually might have some sessions and some dinners. So we might want to coach some of the entrepreneurs and just kind of help them see what when they're in front of the investors, like what kind of ideas or like what. Outside of the Philippines, right? A lot of things, when we have a lot of Filipino founders like that come to Draper Startup House, they seems to be very Philippines focused, and we want to bring them to more of a global scale, which you obviously like has already happened with like YGG and like other amazing entrepreneurs. So Ken, you as head of research, like what have you seen in the space, like globally, also for the Philippines, and like what's bringing all this international attention to the Philippines besides what everybody has mentioned? Have any other insights?
Yeah. So just agreeing with all of them said earlier, I think a big part of what the Philippines is about, and different from the rest of the world, is community. And our community is very, very strong in the sense that even when the bear market comes, we're still here, right? Even if there's harsh times, we're still here actually to champion Web3, to champion how blockchain affects lives of other people. And that's really evident in this event alone. And all the events that I've been in like every week, I see the cultivation of culture and people actually enjoying what they do, the community, the users, the the apps that they check out, the games that they play. It's a really different community as I've seen when I travel and look at other countries. I think for us, the user base part is one of them. But what stands out from us with the rest of the world is how we handle community and connecting with each other through these different kinds of applications that we have. So I think that's what sets us apart the most.
Yeah, when it comes to, I know you're the big collector for NFTs and very enthusiastic in that space. How's your insights about the, like from institutional investors coming into the NFT land, or even like we were talking also with Winston's before about like getting like people to invest through the security aspect, like how to like actually fundraise through NFTs. Like have you seen any specific structure or ways for entrepreneurs to get like funding through the NFT space, or do you have any insights on that space?
Yeah, so I think it's just about same as evaluating different kinds of companies, right? So when you're looking into companies, it's always going to be for the same for different assets. Like one for us that you guys have to think of the most is, what does this asset represent? If it's an NFT land based in, let's say, Decentraland, okay, what's the traction for Decentraland? Is there a lot of users? Are there going to be a lot of people coming in to actually, enjoy this land, to actually, look at the ads on these lands, to actually, hang out in these lands? It's just like commercial structures wherein, you see where the foot traffic is, and you see what has been built on that, and how much traction and exposure you can get from that. So when it comes to different kinds of NFT projects, we're kind of looking at the same things here. So one is the team that creates the project, how they can execute, how well versed they are in what they're doing, and the heart that they have for this, the passion. Another part would be, of course, traction, as I just mentioned earlier. How big of a user base you have, how's the month-on-month growth and stuff like that. And I think that's about some of the things that we look at. And there's a lot of factors that come into this and come into this play. Yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of when we talk about the metaverse, it also feels like the attention where we spend like, in different spaces. So obviously like Decentraland or Sandbox, like, it's just about the community, it's about the builders that are in that community. So thinking about James, like why do builders should come to Sandbox? Like I know you guys are working on that space.
And
what are you guys doing to bring builders into the Sandbox?
Absolutely. I guess I by association, I am a representative of Sandbox to a certain extent. I don't know if I'm even allowed to say that, but let's just pass on that. So really what I'm excited about the Sandbox, I guess more from a personal perspective, is that they are really leading the charge to make sort of what we know as the metaverse right now more accessible for the everyday user. For example, with Decentraland, they have no sort of legitimate or they have no official edit tool. Most of these sort of most of the graphics building tools, they're friendly for developers who have developed, or graphics designers who have developed or have designed before, but really Sandbox wants to make it more user-friendly, obviously with Vox Edit and as well as Game Maker, and so they want to provide the opportunity for the everyday person to create experiences and games and other interesting attractions on their platform, and I think that's the key. It's really about how do we make because right now everyone thinks the metaverse is this really complicated tech-heavy world, when it really should be about, it should be as easy as you taking the bus or calling a Grab to go to your workplace and then come back. Like it should be sort of something very frictionless, something that you don't need to deal with a headache, like what is my 12 code MetaMask like seed phrase every time I need to do something. So I think Sandbox is or I really am a proponent for Sandbox, given that they are moving to remove.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of steps to do that. I think some companies here like Metaverse Go are trying to make that very simple to go into the Metaverse. So going back to like us as investors, like from the regulatory perspective here in the Philippines, like how's the landscape right now? You feel like the government are kind of supportive in sense, like, we see the example of Miami, we see what El Salvador has done as, making Bitcoin a legal tender. What's happening here in the Philippines? Are the governments actively, because as investors, right, like one of the main things is like, like if what the entrepreneur is saying, like proposing, is actually going to have like, regulations to make it happen, and it's not going to just be illegal. So what's that in the Philippines? Like maybe Winston and you guys can expand about like, what the government is like proposing.
Is this recorded? No, I'm kidding. First, don't build it in the Philippines. I'm kidding. I think I think the regulatory landscape's nascent but open-minded. So I think that's the most politically correct thing I can say now. So, and it's actually very good. The BSP in the Philippines actually is one of the leading regulators from an intent standpoint in wanting to enable not just crypto but also the use of blockchain and modernization of the securities law. I think about 2 to 3 months ago, the SEC announced that they're finally going to allow crowdfunding in the Philippines, which is kind of a big step. So there is open-mindedness in terms of relaxing regulations so we can do innovative DeFi, fintech kind of companies. I think the area that's lagging is really on how you're able to form companies, how you're able to have stocks, how do you pay taxes, all of that, because startups are inherently a risk business, and you want to be able to have that flexibility, which we don't have in the Philippines yet. So that's kind of a barrier. The other is, but it's not a problem because we can always build companies in the Philippines under other regimes from that standpoint. So it shouldn't stop any entrepreneur, I guess, from being innovative. And why it's worthwhile to keep innovating in the Philippines is that from a user standpoint, we are the best proxy in the world, right? So I build my startups in the United States, and I'm able to be extremely competitive in the market in the US because I'm able to test my product aggressively here in the Philippines. So that's a synergy that we Filipinos must think about quite well. We are unique from a territory in ASEAN compared to any of the other ASEAN markets. So that comes into play, and that helps quite a bit.
Yeah, I get asked all the time, like, we want to launch this, we want to launch in the Philippines, or like even people from Latin America, and Argentina, or Brazil, they want to learn because, what you said is very unique. Also the culture, right, the language, and also like how the community, what Ken was saying as well, like kind of makes this very appealing for a lot of companies to build somewhere, be based somewhere else, but also kind of have like a big, strong team here in the Philippines. You wanted to add something?
So I think in terms of regulatory naman, like if since the government is very much open-minded, I think what's lacking is really just having a grasp of what's happening in Web3 per se. Although personally, I think everyone would share the same thought that we are eventually there won't be Web3 and there will just be tech, and the government will eventually catch up in terms of regulations and stuff. But definitely agree with Winston when it comes to setting up business. Startups are very risky, and I think the Philippines can catch up or improve on that sector where you could founders can open up businesses in peace, or at ease, etc. Because in the Philippines, kasi when you set up a company, the taxes come after you right away. So I think that's a bit of a challenge, but definitely something the Philippines can improve on in terms of regulations.
Yeah, hopefully, because there's a lot of talent here, and like we've seen it in other smaller countries that that brings a big advantage, and also like tourism, like to these spaces. Which what we do here at Repisada House, kind of have this entrepreneurial tourism. So they kind of come here and like get to connect with all of you guys and the people building in this space. So that's very
The
unique.
user base shouldn't. This much opportunity shouldn't stop. The regulations, those kinds of barriers shouldn't stop Filipino builders from building because of the opportunity the Philippines present also. Yeah.
So one topic that I want to ask you guys is about the, sort of like controversy of Web3 owned by too many VCs. Like, we heard like Jack Dorsey saying this and, that 20 minutes left, okay. And guys, if you guys have any questions, please like raise your hand or let us know. No questions? I think Christian or? It's fine. Well, back to the Web3 controversy about like being owned by more VCs. Like what you guys like thoughts on that? Like you feel like maybe we start with you, Ken. Since you look like you want to say something. But yeah, it's just like, the whole concept of like how decentralized is Web3, right? And like how much is backed by like some specific VCs. Like, is it truly centralized? Is it going to take like Web4, Web5, or like, what's your thoughts on that? At least there's a big progress. I agree with Winston from Web2 was like horrible, right? But there's still some improvement in terms of that decentralization and try to leverage more Bitcoin in a way for people to build around it. But
I think that there is a lot of controversy. I agree with that. There is a lot of controversy, especially in these big, like 20 VCs, like let's say A16Z, owning a lot of the economy and owning a lot of the products in DeFi. But I would say that there's pros and cons to that. Like, it's not just black and white. From a perspective of ownership, a lot of these big VCs will be owning a lot of these tokens. But what you guys have to also understand is that they're vested and that the risk is also coming from them, right? They have different risk standpoints just because that they're the early holders. They're the early seed investors. They're the pre-seed guys who've invested in these guys even before everyone else. So the risk that they're taking is that they're supporting these guys and, in like 5 years' time, is it really going to pay off for them, right? So as much as we have this controversy that VCs hold ownership of most of the tokens for certain protocols, certain infrastructure tokens, I think it's kind of justified in the sense that funding will always be a big part of any financial market. So crypto is no different than the others. I mean, it's decentralized, yes, but at the end of the day, there has to be money coming in from VCs, from investors, and these top VCs coming in is becoming the main indicator that crypto is going to be the next level of tech, going to be another layer of how we interact with the internet. So I think there's pros and cons to it. There's good and bad, but it has to be that way in a sense.
You want me to make fun of VCs? I'll make fun of VCs. So I am a VC, used to be one. Hate VCs in general. So I think the problem of Web3 is that, by the way, 90% of all unicorns are owned by 10 VCs as well, right? So it's not unique to Web3. VCs are just inherently greedy. The point here is that it shouldn't be the case anymore for Web3, right? When we started talking decentralization, why do you centralize your capital source from a VC that collects 2 points in management and 20% on management fee that will hold your money for 10 years? How Web3 companies should be built, right? And so I think that America is beginning to recognize that as well. Therefore, there is a tilt from venture capital, pure venture capital, to crowdfunding. So, venture capital, the bulk of it, right, comes from retirement funds of individuals that is aggregated to a very large fund like A16Z or Sequoia or Accel or Benchmark, and then funded, led by a few people back to the innovators, right? And so it's somewhat incompatible when we start in talking that it's the era of decentralization, that the innovation capital of the era of decentralization is heavily centralized. So I think what's going to happen is that will work itself out in a way that if you see there's more and more micro VCs coming up, and they're good, they're more entrepreneur friendly. But more importantly, you're going to see, and please everybody learn this, crowdfunding, right? Why don't you take your case as an entrepreneur directly to people that will want to be a part of your startup, right? Why shouldn't individuals be able to invest at Uber on Series A, right? And wait for it to go public. So I think Dorsey's just pointing out the obvious, right? It's the obvious. But I think where it's going is that there is going to be a reallocation of wealth building on innovation, and that's going to move towards the crowd. And that's a good thing. That's actually the good news of it.
I guess just to add a little bit more to what Winston was saying, a lot of the reason why I feel 10 VCs own everything in the world is because of sort of how Web2 regulations are structured, especially around securities laws. Like if you're an individual, you would not sort of be allowed to participate unless you had over, say, $1 million, because at that point you would be a sophisticated investor. And obviously when sort of those laws were brought out, it was for the protection of the people, but that sort of led to this weird effect where the rich got just richer and then the poor just could never, or like the less wealthy could never be part of that. But especially with the advent of cryptocurrencies, and then you've obviously heard of launch pads, like IDO platforms, that sort of crowdfunding is slowly starting to happen. And it's interesting to see that while the US says, oh, crypto are securities, but they haven't actually started moving to ban them. Like, for example, if this was to happen to a Web2 company, they could just shut it down. They could shut down a deal immediately. But it seems like sort of to date, it seems like there is movement also on the regulatory perspective of allowing a bit more crowdfunding. So I think I'm hoping at least I'm hoping the government sees things in the right direction.
Yeah, I really agree with the microfunds perspective and also like more mobility, right? When this whole concept of Web3 is that, there's no boundaries, right? We can just go and build in any country, and whoever has like the best governance attract the best talent, right? So that's something that we've seen when we have a Draper Cyber House in Estonia, in Tallinn, that is the, very pro e-governance. Like they do a lot of things that very like easy, like not to do paperwork and all those things, and like, also with blockchain. So that's something that really helps, and I think that mobility, network states, and all of that will happen more. But definitely the microphones, that's something that we here are looking to do with these startup houses around the world, and even like invest, write small checks, means this community together is something that we aim to do as well, and build more programs. So as VCs, what do you guys are the most exciting over the next 5-10 years? Like what excites you most, the most?
The end of classic VCs. I keep harping on this because it's a big deal. I think you get AngelList. It's becoming super popular. WeFunder in the United States, Republic, Stonks is coming to the Philippines. So you guys, it's not only crowdfunding but live crowdfunding. That's coming to here. I believe that capital will be a lot more accessible. It's no longer a beauty contest in Sand Hill Road, if you're in California or in Singapore. But really more accessibility and more capital infused into startups by regular people that believes in those startups in a fashion way. So I think that it's going to fuel much more Web3 evolution and transition. And I believe that you're right? They're no longer going to be Web3 companies. They're just tech companies in general. So I think that's what's coming. And I think Web3 truly is revolutionary in terms of what it can do. So more startups, more cool startups are about to be built.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, just agreeing with you guys as well. Like what you said earlier, like Web3 is just going to be like tech, and Web3, like my point on that and what I'm looking forward to is Web3 just feeling like Web2, right? Because right now the ease of access to Web3 is not there. There's so much pain points to actually doing transactions, to actually just playing a game, to actually just sending someone money. It's so hard for just regular people to come in and actually learn this, right? Whereas if compared to Web 2, you have like customer service, you have things to do this, everything is just a click and point. But Web 3 has not achieved that yet because there's like a lot of problems coming from the infrastructure side of point, coming from interoperability, and 3, UI UX issues as well, coming from the first 2 kinds of points that I raised. So I think in the future, we're going to be seeing Web3 just become more inoperable, open to each other. Like, let's say you're going to bridge assets. It doesn't even feel like you're going to be bridging assets. It just feels like one click of a button and you're transferring just funds, right? You won't be seeing like certain hashes in the background. You won't be seeing wallets. Everything is just going to be seamless. Everything is just going to look and feel so smooth. I think that's kind of what I'm looking forward to in the next like 5 to 10 years. I think Web3 should be easy to use, and I think this should be the way Web3 is approached. Yeah.
Yeah, just to, I mean, I definitely agree. What we really are looking at is for Web3 to be able to change the way we do things every day already. Like, personally, like if you're gonna transfer a real estate property, it takes you so much verification, etc. Which, to be honest, Web3 or blockchain can definitely address. And this should be something that we could look for. This is definitely something we could look forward to in the coming years, wherein you don't, as I was saying earlier, it's just gonna be tech eventually, and we don't really feel that there's Web3. Yeah, so we're definitely excited on how government transactions will be now into Web3 and make things easier for everybody. Yeah, and as well as other businesses doing that.
Okay, I think all of the other panelists sort of covered what I was planning to say, because I was trying to think of new things to say once someone said it, but they sort of covered all of that. But yeah, I would have to agree that they shouldn't be called Web3 companies. At the end of the day, they're still companies. And I think sort of, I guess that one takeaway is VCs are also slowly starting to change in the way they're looking at investing into companies. So I do think there is going to be a distinction of Web2 VCs and Web3 sort of, how should I guess Web3 liquidity providers. I think that might be a way to better put it than venture capitalists. I do agree, Web2 venture capitalists are really greedy. I think I was here yesterday, I might have spoken to some of you, but yeah, Web2 venture capitalists are very greedy. I do think there is slowly a shift in the mindset of investing in newer companies and their newer ways of investing. So I'm excited to see what that sort of looks like from the venture side of things. In terms of what companies I'm excited about, I think at the end of the day, what a company should be doing is either making our daily lives easier. It's about sort of reducing that friction in your daily life. Like for example, back then when I had to walk to a bus stop to catch a bus, or if like say the bus only comes every 30 minutes, now I can turn on an app and it'll tell me what time that bus will come. It's those small things in life that it makes that you think like, oh, like I think about this 10 years ago and I'm like, look how far we've come along. I think really those are the guys, as Yula mentioned, like people changing the game. So we invest in game changers that I'm really excited about.
Excellent. So I think we have a question by Christian. You need the microphone, or yeah.
Hey guys. I've noticed since the whole NFT movement has started like 2017. Basically every job description or every element of creating like Web3 products have changed, from the tech to the marketing to even the art, even down to the funding, where it's really the consumers of these NFTs. They purchase and they almost act like the investor, like their own little micro angel investor in that way. I have not seen any VCs recognize that there is a kind of new way of doing these kind of micro investments. And I understand, because morally VCs and institutional investors are trying to either 10 or 100 or 1,000x past the ROI. But is there any strategies to adopt a brand new way of thinking when it comes to investing into smaller projects? I'll give you an example. There has been at least 5 collections in the in the Philippines that have raised anywhere between $400 to $2 million, right? And that was mainly driven by, actually I'm very proud. Actually, it's mainly driven specifically by Filipino crypto consumers, and really institutional and VC funding has been kind of left out. So not even external investments, but it was really funded by local, almost like a greenhouse effect. So is there any strategies or any position that any of you as VCs or institutional investors are planning to take in the future? I mean, I'm basically looking for insights about, or is it just going to be the same old process flow?
Great question.
Yeah, I'll pick that up. Well, I'm going to argue that they're not really NFT consumers or NFT speculators, right? Because I think the key point that VCs look for in NFTs is that utility, right? That word utility. And so we look for utility because that's what is going to drive long-term sustainability on the asset value. So when it comes to NFT, when you put it in the lens of a collectible or access to a group, right, which is what most NFTs are, there's a lack of, I would say, liquidity and secondary market in the US compared to the US, like Bored Ape Yacht Club and all the other crypto funds raise in value because they trade hands quite a bit. And so that creates an interesting opportunity for value creation. From an investor standpoint, when that's a bit more narrow, then people shy away from it. So I think the new parameter that most investors put when assessing an NFT is really more the utility of it, right? So is the underlying asset a little bit more than a GIF file, right? Is it land? Is it investment? Is it scholarship? Is it, you know what I mean? So I think there's a shift towards that. I think the early version of novelty, unique asset has worn out a little bit simply because it was overplayed in 2021. That's my perspective as an investor of it, and I do invest in NFTs quite a bit.
I come from a very traditional view of investing, which is called value investing, and it's really what Warren Buffett has pushed out in his early days. Invest in things that you know and you understand. Like Warren Buffett, one of his first investments was Coca-Cola, because he could go to the store and buy a can of Coca-Cola, and he just enjoyed his Coca-Cola, and he's like, oh, maybe I should invest in this. And then sort of a couple of years down the line, he's like, oh, like look at Delta, like these guys are carrying people from the West Coast to the East Coast. Like this is a useful business. Especially if you're looking at investing in things you don't understand, it's very hard to make a good decision. And at that point, if you're making decisions based on unclear or uncertain information, like it's no different to going to the casino and like putting it on like red or black. So I guess like on the theme of NFTs, it's like look at the NFT, go like why do you want to invest in this, or like why do you want to buy it? For example, I only own one collection of NFTs, and that's Doodles, like which is funny because they have that on the screen there. But because I think it looks kind of dumb, but also kind of cool. So that's the only reason why I own Doodles, other than my company's NFTs collections, obviously. But I think the fundamental question is like, why is this going to be an interesting company? Why is their product interesting? Again, it's like all that, like do your own research. Everyone says do your own research. Like if you don't do your own research, yes, you will get wrecked. You hear a lot of success stories from the VCs, and you hear like unicorns coming up every other day, but for a venture capital firm, when they invest in 100 companies, 95 of them will die. And so as an individual investor, like you have the odds stacked against you. So it's really sort of having faith and going like, oh, I think these guys could be a winner, but that doesn't mean pile like your life savings into them. Like everything in moderation.
Excellent. Well, I think it's very early in the space, and it takes like how composable are those NFTs, right? I know you're building very interesting projects, and like it's not just a JPEG, right? It's things that are gonna have a massive utility. So just early stage, right? Like the NPCs institutional money will definitely come into NFT land sooner than later, because there's amazing people building very good projects. So Isma, last question. Sorry.
So hello, GM. So I'm Ismael. So I'm Isma. My question is, as an investor, on the investor standpoint, what do you think Web3 founders should start raising their capital? What are your thoughts about bootstrapped startup versus VC-funded startup? Because what I saw in the space, it is not a guarantee for VC-funded startup to succeed on this space. So what are your thoughts about bootstrap versus VC-funded in the context of Web3? Thank you.
Yeah, so
Hey, Zama. Nice to see you here, bro. So, so I really think it's about what you're aiming for. I think it's about what you're building, and what you have in mind and what's the purpose for actually raising. Bootstrap versus VC-backed startups, I definitely agree with you there that it's not going to be an indicator of your success if you're VC-backed. However, it does help because VCs will actually guide you, use their expertise to lead you in the space to the right decisions or, what they believe to be right. And we'll give you these network of connections just so that you can have a better go-to market, you can better have a launch strategy, and different things like that. But as you just mentioned, that really doesn't kind of indicate success. So your question was about like bootstrapping, like which one is better or? Yeah, I really don't think there's a black and white answer, yes or no to that. So I would really say that bootstrapping does offer a lot of challenges, especially since you're working with less capital. I much prefer VC funding just because you get that backing, you get that name branding behind you, you get more expertise. However, that really doesn't guarantee you any success. That's just my 2 cents.
Definitely agree. Like it really depends on what you're building also. Like bootstrapping sometimes may not work for your specific startup only because you're gonna build it too slowly for what you wanted to achieve to the point that you'll probably miss out on the market already. So that's when sometimes VCs help. When you get that enough funding to actually do the work that you wanted to do, and that's definitely gonna help you scale. So in terms of looking for VCs, it's definitely important to look for VCs that would actually help you in that space also. Like not all, well, money is probably the easier part, but definitely strategic partnership comes in also. Yeah, so.
All right, I think that's about it. I think we went over time a little bit, but yeah, there's one question? Sorry. He told me to finish, but it's okay.
Sorry, one last question. Yeah. You did mention about the strategic partnership part. So yeah, so basically, I do understand, like quite a majority of us probably are interested in the setting up a startup. So yeah, as startup investors, from your point of view, this is like a collaborative work between the builders and on your part, right? So in terms of the partnership and investment, how do you set it up? Like for example, in terms of ownership or what, or like decision making, how do you guys like come into terms into it? How do we make sure, like, how do you guys keep it true to the main idea of the objective of the project, and then at the same time, like, how do we keep things in line, like just wanting to draw profit out of the startup? Yes.
Well, to be honest, like it really varies like on how the startup is set up, when the investors will be coming in also, and what's the deal. Like there are very early stage startup that will really need guidance. The founders are very young. They need more experience in the space, etc. So definitely it's something some VCs can help in if they're focused on early stage like Archipelago Labs, etc. But there's definitely that time naman for projects to stay true to the main idea and then eventually pivot. So VCs just provide a certain guidance also as an accelerator. Like if we see that this is a market, we could offer some advice for startups to come in. Yeah. So set up in terms of like how the ownership will take, that's very definite. Definitely, that's very different for all startups. Yeah.
Okay, I know they're rushing us, but look for leverage point for partnerships, right? Especially for early stage startups. If you can partner with a brand, it will lower your customer acquisition cost, right? If you partner with a popular or an experienced entrepreneur, it would help, he or she would help you avoid bad VCs. But I think that's the point, is get to know who you want to partner with and then translate that in terms of the business value that you're gonna get. But partner before you get a VC. That would be my advice. Thanks.
Help people get what they need. Hey, I'm a VC, so I'm not going to be biased, but and just a quick point on Web3. It's like it's a politically friendly term right now as we have this regulatory transition period. It's better than saying, well, I'm a crypto project or I'm a blockchain project. It's this new friendly term, and this is the phase we're going along, and it'll be a tech company, as people mentioned, just with the bootstrapping side of things. And VCs it's a double-edged sword. Some will make you, some will break you, and it depends on those terms and who they are. Things like Solana was forced success, and then with NFTs, there's market making involved with creating that liquidity, so things aren't what they seem to be. But with this bootstrapping thing, I think it's important to bootstrap and get grants. So Near just did a 500K US dollar grant to a friend of mine. There's huge grants coming from a lot of the protocols. I can give you a 10K, 25K, 100K AWS grant, and they'll give you discounted services. You won't have to pay AWS costs for a long time. They'll put you in front of VCs. There's a lot of value to be gotten from creating these networks. So work out what you don't want to bounce around from protocols. So a lot of people, they'll look at Aptos or Sway, or what's the new hyped protocol, not even talking to this properly. They'll get a grant from that, and then they'll realize, well, this isn't the right chain for us. Well, Move language may not be for them for various reasons, because they need tech support, but they might get a builder's program or marketing support from that protocol, but then you might bounce around to another one because you realize it's not the right one. So determine what protocol you want. If there's two that suit, maybe go for the one with the biggest grant. Then get an AWS grant. That's something maybe other people or I can provide. And you're kind of bootstrapping and saving those costs until you find those right VCs. And the VC can be important, but things aren't what they seem in this space sometimes. Things are kind of artificially created, or you can get stuck in a lot of predatory terms with some of these VCs. But VCs can add a ton of value. And we do like to get our hands dirty. I know Magnus and ourselves, we really go deep into what we're looking at and supporting projects with whatever they need in the most friendly possible way, let's say. And you need to, and to Winston's point with the future of fundraising, with this transition period we're in regulatory-wise, crowdfunding can be difficult, particularly what's kind of trending now is equity investments with a token side note. Then the SEC aren't going to come after you from selling a security token because you triggered the Howey test. And when you're doing some of these crowdfunding platforms, particularly with equity, or if you're trying to add a token, you can run into troubles down the line. And your smallest investor will complain the most. So sometimes a big VC will provide that value. And then if they're not going to complain like if you've got a ton of little investors. So there's a lot of moving parts with the space. So I just had to add my point of view, because I'm here to help the Philippines community. We're doing work with the government. I love what's happening here with the Web3 space. So just wanted to provide my points.
All right, thank you very much for that very wonderful discussion. I'd like to invite the panelists to have a picture. And another photo with one of the project heads, Miss Bianca. All right, another round of applause for our panelists for today. I hope you all were able to pick up a thing or two in that very engaging discussion. Thank you all for taking the time to join us in this afternoon session. Venture forward.